So in previous videos, we've got our index.html file serving up locally on our internal network. But the question still remains, how do we get our website to be visible to the public? And if we remember from a previous video, we looked at our ifconfig and we saw this inet, which is our internal network IP address. Now this IP address only distinguishes your machines within your internal network. So if you have 6 computers running off of your router at home, they'll each have a unique internal network IP address. So if you go into Google and type in IP address, you should see a box here with your public IP address. Now you'll notice this is different from your internal network IP, and the difference here being is that this is unique to you. So similar to how you have a house address which has your street name with the number, postal code, province, state, whatever it may be, that combination will uniquely identify your house. And similarly, your public IP address will uniquely identify your computer on the internet. So this is the actual IP address that you would then give to your friend to hit your website. So if you were to copy this and paste this into your browser, obviously that's not going to do anything. Similar to how an HTTP server will look for an index.html file by default, your router will, by convention, go to port 80 to look to see if there's an HTTP server running. So I don't have a server running currently, so if I go to my terminal and like we did before with the python -m SimpleHTTPServer, this time we'll pass in an argument for port 80. And that will fail because we don't have permissions. So what you want to do is run that same command but with sudo permission. Type in your password. And this will start a server similar to how we did before, but we're specifying we want to start on port 80 this time. So now that our server is running on port 80, if you go to your IP address, you should be able to see this publicly online. But you'll notice here that it's not actually working yet. That's because my router doesn't have port 80 forwarded. So this is where it becomes hard to demonstrate, since a lot of people have different routers or maybe different internet service providers. But the idea here is you port forward 80, and by hitting your IP address, it'll by default look on port 80 for your server, which will by default look for an index.html file and will serve that up. So when I say by default, otherwise you could just say port 80, but you don't have to, since the default they'll look for is port 80. Now again, I don't recommend doing this because this will introduce a lot of security vulnerabilities, and there are other ways to go about hosting websites. But I do hope that this helped with the understanding of servers.